hard pass didn't work? Your hard pass didn't work?
I see your
Mine didn't either yesterday. I was down here yesterday. Yeah, they didn't get the renewal list. No. They, you know,
Catherine, I'm sorry, do you hear them talking to you?
Yeah. I hear you just fine, thank you.
It's so like I hear next to times. It's no, it's like just in and out. We'll make sure.
working out your hair.
It's just, I think it's just the IFB. It's okay, I can still hear you. I think I can. Let's try. Okay.
What?
Hey guys, talk to me.
Sneak out.
Just want to make sure. Okay. Just want to make sure you're still breaking.
Okay, let's move.
Go right ahead. Good morning, how are you?
yes, okay. So, yeah, can you?
So what I would do then is I would just concentrate to the first question, which is you want to tell people that Whitaker's been cleared by DOJ ethical officials to oversee the Russian investigation of Lawrence, which is fine to do that, despite his previous comments to the media, which were kind of critical of Roe, right? And then the second thing is the bar.
Hey there, Jen, we're waiting here at the Justice Department for officials to come out to talk about very different subjects having to do with a national security issue, but certainly sure to be asked about all of the developments surrounding this newly unearthed memo from the president's pick
Thank you for coming. Hope you're all appreciating the end of year slowdown in the media cycle. We're going to start in about a minute. The flow is going to be the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, followed by the FBI Director, Chris Wray, followed by the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Jeffrey Berman. Following that, those three plus Assistant Attorney General John Demers for National Security will be available for questions. After the Q&A period, I'll come back into this room after about 3 or 4 minutes with a couple subject matter experts to do any background on the specifics of the case and on the China initiative writ large. All right, so we'll be back in about a minute. Thank you.
Deputy Attorney General to respond to both of these issues. Number one, the acting Attorney General, Matt Whitaker, will have principal oversight for the Robert Mueller investigation. And second, this idea that if the Mueller investigation is looking at an obstruction case, there's not a sound legal foundation, so we're on to hear the Deputy Attorney General's view on that as well. So she was behind closed doors for 7 hours yesterday. I'm going to actually duck down because we're just about to begin. We'll be back with you.
Well, good morning. I'm honored to be joined this morning by FBI Director Chris Wray, National Security Division Assistant Attorney General John Demers, and United States Attorney Jeff Berman from the Southern District of New York. Today, the Department of Justice is announcing a criminal indictment of 2 hackers associated with the Chinese government. The charges include conspiracy to commit computer intrusions against dozens of companies in the United States and around the world. As with all American criminal charges, individual defendants are presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty in court. This case is significant because the defendants are accused of targeting and compromising managed service providers, or MSPs. MSPs are firms that are trusted to store, process, and protect commercial data, including intellectual property and other confidential business information. When hackers gain access to MSPs, they can steal sensitive business information that gives competitors an unfair advantage. The indictment alleges that the defendants worked for a group known to cybersecurity experts as APT-10. These groups are designated as APTs, or Advanced Persistent Threats, because they use malware to gain access to computer networks and to exfiltrate or steal data over an extended period of time. These defendants allegedly compromised MSP clients in at least a dozen countries, the United States and 11 other countries. The victims included companies in banking and finance, telecommunications and consumer electronics, medical equipment, packaging, manufacturing, consulting, healthcare, biotechnology, automotive, oil and gas exploration, and mining. The defendants allegedly committed these crimes in association with a Chinese intelligence agency known as the Ministry of State Security. Now, this is not the first time that the Department of Justice has accused Chinese state actors of stealing commercial information. Since the indictment of 5 uniformed members of the People's Liberation Army in 2014, our department has repeatedly cast a spotlight on China for its state-sponsored criminal activity targeting American corporations. More than 90% of the department's cases alleging economic espionage over the past 7 years involve China. More than 2/3 of the department's cases involving thefts of trade secrets are connected to China. In the last few months of this year alone, our department has announced charges in 3 separate cases alleging crimes committed at the behest of a branch of the Chinese Ministry of State Security. It is unacceptable that we continue to uncover cybercrime committed by China against America and other nations. In 2015, China promised to stop stealing trade secrets and other confidential business information through computer hacking with the intent of providing competitive advantage to companies in the commercial sector. But the activity alleged in this indictment violates the commitment that China made. That was a commitment they made to members of the international community, to the United States, to the G20, and to APEC. Now, we want China to cease its illegal cyber activities and honor its commitment to the international community. But the evidence suggests that China may not intend to abide by its promises. For example, Chinese industrial policy, known as Made in China 2025, lists strategic advanced manufacturing industries that the nation has targeted for promotion and development. Many of the companies allegedly targeted recently by Chinese defendants operate in sectors identified in that official Chinese policy. Whether through computer hackers operating from China or Chinese nationals recruited to steal trade secrets from companies in other countries, the goal is the same: to dominate production in strategically important industries by stealing ideas from other nations. It's just as if they had broken into American companies and taken the data information out physically. They're doing it through cyber means. Today's charges mark an important step in revealing to the world China's continued practice of stealing commercial data. Responding to that conduct requires a strategic, whole-of-government approach to the threats that China poses. That is why the Department of Justice recently announced an initiative to address a full range of threats. Mr. Demers and Director Wray have been leaders of that effort. One tactic is to increase our enforcement efforts. Another is to conduct foreign investment reviews to protect against China improperly acquiring sensitive information through the acquisition of American companies. A third is to find ways to better protect our telecommunications infrastructure. China stands accused of engaging in criminal activity that victimizes individuals and companies in the United States, violates our laws, and departs from international norms of responsible state behavior. Exposing these actions through the criminal justice system is a valuable tool in the Department of Justice arsenal. Faced with the detailed factual allegations today and the corroborating statements, not just from the United States, but from other victimized nations, China will find it difficult to pretend that it is not responsible for these actions. America and its many allies know what China is doing. We know why they're doing it, and in some cases, we even know exactly who is sitting at the keyboard perpetrating these crimes in association with the Chinese government. The alleged criminals in this case are named Zhu Hua and Zhang Shulong. We hope the day will come when those defendants face justice under the rule of law in an American courtroom. Until then, they and other hackers who steal from our companies for the apparent benefit of Chinese industry should remember there is no free pass to violate American laws merely because they do so under the protection of a foreign state. The Department of Justice and the FBI will continue to use all available tools to respond to China's economic aggression and the threat that these actions pose to the prosperity and security of the United States and other nations that respect the rule of law. I want to introduce next Chris Wray, Director of the FBI, to make some remarks, followed by Jeff Berman, our U.S. Attorney from Southern New York.
As evidenced by this investigation, the threats we face have never been more severe or more pervasive or more potentially damaging to our national security. And no country poses a broader, more severe, long-term threat to our nation's economy and cyber infrastructure than China. China's goal, simply put, is to replace the U.S. as the world's leading superpower, and they're using illegal methods to get there. They're using an expanding set of non-traditional and illegal methods. China's state-sponsored actors are the most active perpetrators of economic espionage against us. In short, they seek to strengthen themselves and to weaken the United States. And while we welcome fair competition, we cannot and will not tolerate illegal hacking, stealing, or cheating. We're not talking about the Chinese people as a whole. We're talking about state-sponsored actors engaged in illegal behavior. These aren't just Chinese officials employed by the Chinese government. They can be hackers, businessmen, researchers, or front companies acting on behalf of state actors. And often they're recruiting or co-opting insiders, employees of American companies, trusted. As noted, the actors named in this indictment were members of a hacking group operated in China and associated with the Chinese Ministry of State Security, a group known as APT-10. The members of APT-10 conducted major computer intrusion campaigns targeting U.S. government agencies and companies both around the country and across the world, and stealing hundreds of gigabytes of intellectual property and confidential business information. The list of victim companies reads like a who's who of the global economy, from biotechnology, agriculture to healthcare, from oil and gas exploration to NASA. Healthy competition is good for the global economy. Criminal conduct is not. Rampant theft is not. Cheating is not. There is no light on this issue between the United States and our law-abiding international partners. We're all standing shoulder to shoulder to condemn this conduct. The scope of this investigation was broad, as you might imagine, involving field offices from New Orleans, New York, Sacramento, San Antonio, and Houston. And we're incredibly grateful not only to our DOJ colleagues, but to our partners in the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, the Defense Criminal Investigative Service, and the Department of Homeland Security for their work. We also appreciate our partners in the Department of Defense's Computer Forensic Laboratory, who worked with us as we analyzed hundreds of malware samples. With this malware, FBI and NCIS investigators found key links between major victims and APT-10's command and control infrastructure. After identifying additional victims here in the United States and around the world, the FBI's Cyber Action Team, which is our elite rapid deployment force, and our cyber counterparts at DHS deployed to multiple locations to provide technical support and investigative assistance. We also worked with our counterparts in the NCIS to investigate APT-10's theft of personally identifiable information for more than 100,000 U.S. Naval Service members. We are deeply concerned about American innovation ending up in the wrong hands, including by nation states like China intent on stealing the fruits of our research, our economic investment, our development, and our hard work for their gain. This is conduct that hurts American businesses, hurts American jobs, hurts American consumers. The Chinese government is not pulling any punches. They want what we have so that they can get the upper hand on us, and they're strategic in their approach. They're playing the long game. But let me be perfectly clear. No country should be able to flout the rule of law. So we're going to keep tackling this illegal behavior with everything we've got, every investigative technique, every piece of intelligence, every partnership from federal, state, local, and international partners to private sector, community, and academic partners. And we're going to keep calling out this state-sponsored behavior for what it is: illegal, unethical, and unfair. It's going to take all of us working together to protect our economic security and our way of life. The American people expect and deserve no less. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Jeff Berman, U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Today, we announced charges against two Chinese hackers, Zhu Hua and Zhong Shulong, for their involvement in the massive theft of intellectual property and confidential business information from U.S. and foreign companies, as well as U.S. government agencies. The extent and types of data stolen by the defendants is shocking and outrageous. As the Deputy Attorney General and the Director noted, the defendants are alleged to have been members of a hacking group operating in China called APT-10. As alleged, these defendants engaged in their hacking campaign in association with the Chinese Ministry of State Security. Over the past 12 years, APT-10 has mounted a series of sophisticated computer intrusion campaigns that targeted more than 45 commercial and defense technology companies in the United States, as well as managed service providers and their clients across the globe. As the indictment alleges, the defendants used spear phishing to install malware that stole the usernames and passwords of employees of the victim companies. Then, once in the victim systems, the defendants, using methods to prevent detection, transferred valuable information and data to computer servers that they controlled. A more recent phase of the conspiracy targeted managed service providers, or MSPs. By compromising the computer systems of an MSP, the defendants gained a foothold to more easily compromise the computer networks of the MSP's numerous clients across the globe. As the Deputy Attorney General noted, the defendants compromised the data of MSP clients located in 12 countries: Brazil, Canada, France, Finland, Germany, India, Japan, Sweden, Switzerland, the United Arab Emirates, the United Kingdom, and the United States. The defendants' hacking campaigns also targeted U.S. government agencies, including the laboratories of NASA, the United States Department of Energy, and the U.S. Navy. Members of APT-10 stole personal confidential information, including Social Security numbers and dates of birth, from over 100,000 Navy personnel. It is galling that American companies and government agencies spent years of research and countless dollars to develop their intellectual property, while the defendants simply stole it and got it for free. As a nation, we cannot and will not allow such brazen theft to go unchecked. I have a message for these defendants, the other members of APT-10, as well as their associates in the Chinese Ministry of State Security. The U.S. government will work relentlessly to identify you and to bring you to justice. You cannot remain anonymous, even if you are halfway across the world. While these defendants remain at large, they are now fugitives from the American justice system, which has a long memory. We look forward to the day when these defendants will be in a courtroom in the Southern District of New York to be held to account. I want to thank Director Wray and the FBI. I would also like to thank the Defense Criminal Investigative Service and the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. Their work in this case has been extraordinary and serves as an example of what can be accomplished by collaboration among U.S. law enforcement agencies. We are very lucky to have them as partners. I would also like to thank the prosecutors in my office who investigated and prosecuted this case, AUSA, Sagar Ravi, as well as the co-chiefs of our complex fraud and cybercrime unit, Timothy Howard and Daniel Noble.
Okay, we're gonna take a few questions now. Pete?
Mr. Rosenstein, what can you tell us about the nature of what the hackers stole and how much damage it did to the target companies?
So I can tell you only what's described in the indictment in this case, which describes the types of industries that were affected. We don't have a lot of detail in there about the particular information that was stolen. And of course, we don't identify victims in our indictments. We do work with victims to ensure that they're able to take any appropriate remedial action. But let me ask Director Wray to talk about that in more detail.
So as the Deputy Attorney General said, we do work closely with the victims, but we don't want to compound their harm. What I would say is that we had great cooperation from a whole number of companies and organizations on this so that they can take appropriate steps. But the kind of information we're talking about here is confidential information and by definition valuable, very valuable information for these companies. One way to think of what is alleged in this indictment is you've all heard about situations where you see somebody, essentially the cyber equivalent of breaking into a house. This is more like breaking into and getting the keys from the maintenance supervisor who has keys to hundreds and hundreds of apartments and all the residents in those apartments. And that's why this is so significant.
May I just follow up? Mr. Rosenstein, can you tell us what, since Mr. Whitaker has come here, what your role has been in overseeing the Mueller investigation?
We'll have more for you on that later today. In terms of my role, as we've described previously, we've continued to manage the investigation as we have in the past, and it's being handled appropriately. You know, if it's Bob Mueller or Rod Rosenstein or Matt Whitaker or Bill Barr, that investigation is going to be handled appropriately by the Department of Justice.
Maura?
Mr. Deputy Attorney General, since we have the benefit of you here today, would you mind weighing in on the memo that was revealed last night from the president's pick to leave the department, Bill Barr, that weighed in on the Mueller investigation, calling the obstruction inquiry fatally misconceived? And also, given the Barr nomination, should we expect that the ultimate report on the Mueller investigation would be deferred until he's confirmed?
Bill Barr was an excellent Attorney General during the approximately 14 months that he served in 1991 to 1993. Bill Barr will be an outstanding Attorney General when he's confirmed next year. The memo that you may reference to reflects Mr. Barr's personal opinion. He shared his personal opinion with the department. Lots of people offer opinions to the Department of Justice, but they don't influence our own decision-making. We have very experienced lawyers, and obviously our decisions are informed by our knowledge of the actual facts of the case, which Mr. Barr didn't have. I didn't share any confidential information with Mr. Barr. He never requested that we provide any non-public information to him, and that memo had no impact on our investigation.
Two very quick questions. Number one, can you give us a sense of the number of groups like this operating in China that are attempting to steal information? And then my second question is on the rule of law. The President of the United States tweeted a photograph with you behind bars. He talked about a cooperating witness as being a rat. Can you assure the American public that this department will make sure it operates directly on the rule of law?
The second question first. This department operates under the rule of law. That means we make our decisions based on the facts and circumstances of each individual case and without regard to partisan political considerations. On the first question, I think it's important for people to understand this group is referred to as APT-10, Advanced Persistent Threat 10. It is not the only one, and I think Director Wray can talk with you a bit about what the FBI does, not only to prosecute perpetrators, but to work with American businesses to try to deter and prevent these sorts of attacks.
The one thing I would add to what the Deputy Attorney General just said is that in addition to these APT-10 group, or APT-1 through 9, or the APTs of the future, we have lots and lots and lots of criminal hackers working in varying ways in coordination with and on behalf of nation states. It's what we call a blended threat. Think of it as just outsourcing your criminal or espionage activity to mercenaries. China's not the only country that we've seen do it, but people in this country need, and around the world, need to understand that China is the most active and aggressive in this space. And so it's not just Chinese officials with epaulets on their uniforms. These are state-owned enterprises, ostensibly private companies, hackers of all shapes and sizes, researchers, businessmen, people working for a variety of reasons, some witting, some unwitting, on behalf of the Chinese government. And it's a very serious threat that this country needs to take very seriously.
Mr. Deputy Attorney General, what do you say to critics who argue the Justice Department is being used for political purposes at a time of heightened tension between the U.S. and China, especially when you have the President coming out and signaling that he may be willing to interfere with your extradition efforts in a separate case?
Well, first of all, what I say to critics is we're always going to have critics. No matter what we do and what we tell our people and what Director Wray and U.S. Attorney Berman and Assistant Attorney General Demers and all of our officials in the Department of Justice understand is that we have a responsibility to do our job. We have a responsibility to investigate cases based on the facts. We need to apply the law and make independent decisions about what steps to take. So our decisions about whether or not a case merits prosecution are not affected by any other political considerations.
One follow-up question, Mr. Deputy Attorney General. Why did you decide not to prosecute AMI, even though they admitted to trying to interfere in a free and fair election? Are you holding corporations to a different standard than individuals?
I'm not going to address that question here.
Last question, Kevin.
Mr. Deputy Attorney General, can you address this? And lawmakers have tried with little luck to enact a protection for Robert Mueller through legislation. Do you believe that protection is necessary, or do you believe that his investigation is on threat?
The investigation is being conducted in accordance with the Department of Regulation, and nothing anybody says is going to affect that. So I believe that that investigation is being handled appropriately under the existing Department regulations. Thank you very much.
John Burns is here to take questions back.